Hey witches, welcome to Busy, Gritty, Inked and Witchy, a magical living podcast for the busy witch. I'm Morgan, eclectic witch of almost 25 years, Avalon priestess, and busy witch. Here we'll talk all things witchy, from current metaphysical happenings to my busy witch tips and tricks, and everything in the in-between. This podcast is my personal journey, filled with my knowledge, opinions, and unique way of looking at the world. Join me as I weave the magical and the mundane in every episode. Hey witches, welcome back to Busy, Gritty, Inked and Witchy. I'm Morgan, and today I am talking about Venus retrograde. Yes, it's been going on for a couple of weeks now, but there have been so many things popping up on social media, but also in my personal circle, like people around me, that is Venus retrograde related. So I was like, you know what? We're still going to be in this for another month. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. It makes a perfect podcast episode, especially with as many of you who reached out after I did the Mars retrograde one a couple of months ago. This is something, this is a topic you all are really interested in. So, all right, hold on. I always set things up so nice and clean with my notes and everything. Like, oh, I'm going to leave it all out. And then I start recording and my energy shifts and I'm like, let's go back to chaos. Okay. All right, so Venus retrograde, what I'm going to be talking about today, what it is, the dates, how to navigate it, all that fun stuff, okay? So it started on March 1st of this year, 2025. If you are listening to this, way after it, the energies that I'm going to start out with are general to all Venus retrogrades. And then about halfway through the episode, I'm going to shift into some more specific ones just for this Venus retrograde, which is March 1st, 2025 through April 12th, 2025. So it lasts about 6 weeks, and Venus goes retrograde about once a year. I think it comes out to like every 13 or 14 months, but it's about once a year. We get it for about 6 weeks. Okay. It can be one of the milder ones. Well, I guess I can't say that. For me, it's always one of the milder ones, but that's because I've also been married for 26 years, and my husband and I have just a very no bullshit relationship with one another. So like we call each other out on our bullshit. We say what's on our mind, all of that kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm going to get to all of that. But for me, it's not a huge one. It can be a huge one. I can recognize where in my past it's been a huge one, but there is a sneaky aspect of Venus retrograde that it's one that people do not focus on. We're definitely going to talk about it. So, okay, Venus is the planet associated with love and self-love. Okay, so keep that in mind. Beauty, relationships, and this can be romantic relationships, friendships, and your relationship with money. And this is where Venus retrograde gets very sneaky. And this is probably where a lot of people are affected by Venus retrograde because it's very sneaky. People generally associate money and finances with Jupiter, the planet Jupiter. So then when Jupiter retrograde happens, people think, oh, that's when my finances are going to be messed up, or that's when I'm going to have money wounds open. It can be, but that's going to be more of like your big picture money, career, job, finances type thing. This one, Venus retrograde, is your relationship with money. So we're going to dive into that. It is also the planet of emotions and compassion and kindness. So when Venus retrograde occurs, and just to back up just a little, a planetary retrograde is when the planet in its orbit appears to be moving backwards from the perspective of Earth. Okay. The planet is not actually moving backwards in its orbit, but it has to do with Earth and how we're viewing the planet and the planet's orbit, because they're not all perfect circles when it comes to an orbit around the sun. So it just appears that for about 6 weeks every year-ish, Venus looks like it's going backwards, okay? But just as your astrological chart, the birth chart, the sky when you were born does have energy, or it can explain energies in your life or energies about who you are, the planets will affect you, okay? And I know a lot of people out there are like, oh, astrology's mumbo jumbo, da da da. Hopefully if you're listening to this, you're at least curious, because it's all very real, which is why back in the day, they used to employ astrologers, when it came to like kings, queens, empires, rulers had astrologers on the payroll because it was so important because of how much astrology and the stars do affect us as human beings. And I really wish they would go back to that, honestly. Anyway, so that's what a retrograde is in general. So with Venus retrograde, it just looks like for 6 weeks, it's going backwards in its orbit. Okay. So because it appears to people on Earth that it is moving backwards, disruptions within this planet's realm of expertise happen. Okay. And most people are very familiar with Mercury retrograde. We are actually in a Mercury retrograde right now, if you are watching this when it airs. And that's the one that it very closely affects everyone because Mercury it happens so many times a year. And because it is so close to the Earth. So Venus retrograde, because it is so close to Earth as well, can have profound, not repercussions, but like consequences or things that happen. It 100% can. But it's going to affect the areas that planet rules. Okay. So common occurrences during Venus retrograde include old lovers popping up. Yeah. Unresolved emotional issues resurface. And generally speaking, no, I'm going to fast forward, or I'm going to get to that when in a few minutes. Okay. Unhealthy relationships end. Okay. So this can be romantic relationships. It can be friendships. It can also be work relationships. So if you are in a toxic work situation, somebody may get fired either to remove that toxic person, from the thing, or if the company itself is toxic, there might be layoffs or something that happen during a Venus retrograde. But just know that, if any kind of job money shifts happen, it is because the retrograde energy is clearing out. It's clearing out the toxic shit. Okay. Closure from past trauma can come. So this is where Venus retrograde can be very healing on an emotional level. Money lessons that you have not learned in the past will repeat themselves. Okay. So that is a sneaky one. And that is one that it actually affects more people, or that can affect more people than maybe the relationship part of it. Okay. Love and sex life becomes stagnant. So might need to spice things up, which I'm going to talk to you about how to navigate through Venus retrograde, in a little while. And then love or money or relationship wounds can be reopened so you truly face them. Okay. If you have money stories, love stories, relationship stories, that you have healed from, like truly dealt with, truly faced, and truly healed from, these are not going to pop up for you. You're going to be able to move on. Okay. Hold on, let me see. Yeah. Okay. Which is why I think that for at least, I don't know, the last decade or more, Venus retrograde has not really affected me very much, because Venus retrograde would have affected me when I was at rock bottom, about 15 years ago. That is when Venus retrograde probably just ran through me like a stomach bug, But it's only when things are unresolved that they really start to pop up. And that's actually true of most retrogrades. When it comes to things popping up from your past, it's things that are unresolved. Okay. Now some retrogrades are clearing a path forward for you. And they're clearing a path forward for you. Whereas a lot of retrogrades, are clearing up things from your past so that you can move forward. And I hope you can understand the distinction there. Okay. So I teach to not fear a planetary retrograde, period. I don't care if it's Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. I don't care. Any of them. I teach to not fear. Okay. We maybe should be fearing the Earth retrograde that's happening right now. And for those of you that don't understand that was a joke, I apologize. I know it was an astrology joke. It was like, zoom, right over here for some of y'all. And I understand. There is no Earth retrograde. It's just with all of the weird ass shit happening on Earth right now. I'm going to go ahead and say Earth's in retrograde. It's not, but it would explain it if it was. Anyway, planetary retrogrades come along to shake up the energy so that you can deal with things. Okay. So that shit can be cleared up in your life so that you can face things and clear up your past so that you can move forward, or to remove blockages in front of you from you moving forward that are keeping you from moving forward. Okay. So that's why I almost have like a very huge, large, big picture look at things when it comes to almost a whole year. For me, what I do is I understand that Venus retrograde is here to clear up any stagnant energy. And I'm for it. I am for clearing up stagnant energy. Okay. Clearing up shit that I don't need anymore. Clearing out shit I don't need anymore. So for me, I look at all planetary retrogrades. I look at all planetary alignments. I look at all things as out of curiosity, all right, what are we shaking up? A lot of people were in eclipse season now. And the eclipse season started with a full moon lunar eclipse, blood moon lunar eclipse on March 14th. And so many people on the internet were like, oh my God, a blood moon lunar eclipse. This is so horrible. And I'm like, you know what? It's going to shake some shit up. It's going to cause transformations. But that's what I'm here for. I'm here for it. Let's see what happens, So anyway, planetary retrogrades, I view them as a bigger picture. And I actually very highly work with the energy because I'm ready. I'm ready to clear shit out. I'm ready to be moving forward on my path. I'm ready to be getting closer to my authentic self. I'm ready to, up level in my spiritual growth. I'm here for all of that. So I understand that Mercury retrograde has its job to do. Venus retrograde has its job to do. Mars retrograde has its job to do. Okay. So I'm here to work with it. And that's what I love to teach other people, is how to work with this energy and how to view it from a standpoint of curiosity, because it makes it so much more fun. I mean, it's so much more fun to look at anything out of curiosity than fear. Curiosity opens you up, it expands you out, and it keeps you optimistic. Whereas fear is going to close you off and it keeps you stuck in your house and probably sick. I mean, fear can manifest physically in so many different ways, but that is an entirely different podcast episode. So let me wrangle myself back in and bring myself back to Venus retrograde. Okay. Okay. All right. So this is, okay. I definitely want to see, because this could be soundbite if I say it correctly. Okay. So I teach not to fear retrogrades. They are giving you energy needed to clear shit up in your life. It just usually happens to be uncomfortable shit that you packed away and refuse to acknowledge. And that is why people fear retrogrades so much. Because that shit that they packed away and they were like, I'm not going to deal with you right now. We're just going to put you away so I can move forward. But that thing keeps bubbling up and you keep shoving it down and you're like, shut up. I don't want to deal with you. The retrograde comes around to be like, look, bitch, you're dealing with me now. Okay. And it pops up and it's uncomfortable. And that's why people fear retrogrades, because they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to deal with my relationship wounds right now. I don't want to deal with my money wounds right now. Fuck Venus retrograde. That's why people fear retrograde so much, okay? The key is to work with the energy, not against it. And I'm going to get to how to work with the energy of Venus retrograde right after I talk about this particular Venus retrograde in 2025, okay? It starts off on March 1st in Aries, in the constellation of Aries. Now, Aries is a fire sign. So that could mean your tempers are going to be flared, heated discussions, and imperfections in relationships could be revealed, especially with that lunar eclipse that I was just talking about that happened on March 14th. And like this is after the lunar eclipse. So things don't always just happen on the lunar eclipse. What can happen, basically what a lunar eclipse or solar eclipse, but mostly lunar, what it does is it'll shake the energy up. So if you think of it like a soda bottle, on the 14th, the energy got shaken up, okay? The top could pop. The top could have popped on the 14th. The top could pop on the 16th. The top could pop on April 27th. It just depends on how much the energy got shaken up during the eclipse. Was it just a little shaken to where it takes a while for the top to pop? Or was it an extreme destruction of one thing so that something else could be reborn? And that means you're going to be feeling the effects pretty quickly. Okay. So that's how with the Aries influence on the Venus retrograde and the eclipse, there might have been some tops popped. There might have been, or it could be coming. Okay. Because imperfections in relationships could be revealed, okay? Then on March 27th, Venus retrograde enters the sign of Pisces, which is a water sign, okay? So things are going to go from anger and temperament and fire to water and emotions, okay? So this is where there might be a little bit more of an emotional roller coaster, or the emotions might be a little bit deeper. But you might also have an emotional release, okay? So this could be extremely healing, as you could be releasing emotional baggage or wounds from your past or past trauma, okay? So while you might feel like you're crying every single day, or the freaking car commercial makes you cry, get it out. Let it out. Let that emotional release happen, because you don't want to be the soda bottle shaken up and that explodes on something. Okay. So once we shift over into Venus retrograde in Pisces, if it starts to just kind of trickle out, crying here, crying there, let it go. You don't want to keep it bottled up. Okay. So that's the energy of Venus retrograde, particularly for 2025. So how do you work with the energy of Venus retrograde? How do you navigate this time? Okay. The first thing to keep in mind is you need to have patience when relationship issues pop up. Try to look at them objectively. Okay. And again, this can be your relationship with yourself. So if you find that you're critiquing yourself a lot harder, or you're a lot harder on yourself, you're coming down on yourself a lot more, by all means, please get your self-talk in check. Okay. This can be relationship, like romantic relationship, marriage, partners. This can also be friendships. This can also be work relationships. Okay. So any type of relationships, or relationships with, of course, family members. Okay. Have patience when relationship issues pop up, if they do pop up. Okay. Deal with issues from your past. You have got to deal with them so you can heal from them. Okay. This might be facing fears. This might be finally looking at some shit that has happened in your past and being like, I'm going to heal from this, or I'm going to let this go and not let it affect me anymore. Any of that kind of stuff. Okay. Face your money wounds. Yeah. Okay. So look at your relationship with money and your money story. Okay. So your relationship with money and your money story, you may hear that phrase a lot, especially if you listen to a lot of metaphysical podcasts or follow a lot of metaphysical people, on social media. Your money story is the story that you tell yourself about money. Okay. And Some of your money story is yours. Some of your money story is passed down from your parents. Okay. So for example, I'm going to share my money story, and different iterations of my money story throughout the years. I grew up in when I was 10, we moved to a very small southern town. Okay. My dad was a fireman and my mom had various jobs, professional jobs, over the years. Okay. But when I hit about 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there, my parents were not great with money and they never taught me how to be good with money either. Okay. So my parents declared bankruptcy right around the time that I was becoming a teenager. And we lived in a very small rural town. And we had a house, we had a roof over our head, we had cars, but we did not have money, So I grew up, Colin and I joke a lot. I grew up on like cheese sandwiches and we didn't have brand name Oreos. We had, the off-brand Oreos. I was taken to Kmart to shop for my, school clothes and stuff like that. We didn't have a lot of money. So a lot of these wounds I carried with me. First of all, I was never taught how to manage money. I was never taught how to save money, invest money, nothing like that. Neither was Colin. So when we first got married, we were broke as shit. And any little bit of money we got, we splurged because that's what my dad did. So any little bit, if he ever worked overtime, he went and bought a TV, he went and bought a new truck. He was always buying things on credit and then, had to declare bankruptcy. So these were the money stories that were passed on to me, that I took into my marriage. Colin's money stories were very similar. And so we struggled a lot throughout the beginning of our marriage, financially. So it's just been over the years now that my money story has shifted. But one of the things and one of the fun side effects of having a money story like this is I always wanted to shop at Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or farmers markets. I always wanted to, but we never could afford it growing up. And then even, my early 20s into my 30s could never afford stuff like that. So in my mind, my money story was, oh, well, I can't shop at those places. So those people are stuck up anyway. I don't want to be those people that eat organic cantaloupe and, eat tofu. And they're so pretentious. That's the story I told myself because I couldn't afford that stuff and I wanted to so badly. So it was easier for me to put them down instead of dealing with my own money story and cleaning it up. So then I carried that money story for years. And then Colin and I have finally hit a place over the last few years, especially once he retired from the military, where he cleaned up our money story together. He cleaned it up and then was like, hey, this is what we're doing. And I'm like, okay, that seems a hell of a lot better than how we have been listening. And I had to readmit myself, look, I really want to shop at Whole Foods just every now and then. And he's like, okay, we can afford it. And I was like, oh, what do you mean we can afford it? And he was like, yeah. And it took a very long time for me to shed the limiting beliefs that I had about shopping at places like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and eating at fancy restaurants and treating ourselves on our anniversary to a really nice weekend getaway within Tucson at a hotel. You know what I mean? It took a lot of deconditioning and reframing my money story before I could even embrace and really truly enjoy this. And look at how far we've come, from being extremely poor. At one point I was trying to figure out how to make ramen fancy, or ramen a complete meal, to oh, no, my favorite thing that I always tell my kids, my kids do not have, they don't know how bad it was at one point, because I was really good at protecting them from it. But at one point we were so broke that we had Hamburger Helper without the hamburger because I couldn't afford it. And I was extreme couponing. So I probably got the pack of Hamburger Helper for like 99 cents. And that's all we could afford. Not even, no hamburger in the Hamburger Helper, you guys. Okay. So to go from that to being able to take an entire weekend for our anniversary, like that's a huge shift. And there was a lot that had to shift within me to be able to accept this. Okay. Total side tangent as far as money story, but I think a lot of people don't understand what a money story is. And your money story is always evolving. It's always changing, but it is the beliefs or limiting beliefs that you have about money and the stories that you've told yourself because of the different places in your life where money has either helped you or hurt you. Okay. So, it's time during Venus retrograde. It's a great time to face your money wounds, look at your relationship with money and your money story, and what can you shift? What is outdated? You know, I fucking love shopping at Whole Foods now. I shop at Whole Foods, shop at Trader Joe's. I love going to a farmer's market. I love being bougie. It has taken me a lot to admit these things because in my mind, in the past, like, oh, that's pretentious. People are going to think I have a stick up my ass if I tell them I like to shop at Whole Foods. Okay. And if you do, if you're sitting there right now, like, man, she has a stick up her ass. If she's shopping at Whole Foods, that's part of your money story, not mine anymore. Yeah. Okay. If old lovers pop up, remind yourself of why y'all broke up. Okay. I'm not saying that when old lovers pop up, you should just shut them down and move them out. Okay. Maybe the reason that you all broke up, maybe you've grown past that, or maybe you have changed as individuals and can work through things now. But by all means, look at everything objectively if old lovers pop up or old, exes pop up. Look at it objectively. Like you might be sitting back thinking about all the good things, but was it really that good? Or was it really, really bad? And you've been really grateful to have them out of your life. Okay. If your love life gets a little stagnant, spice it up, like intentionally spice it up. Where you put your intention and your focus, that's where your energy is going to flow. Okay. So you don't have to sit back for 6 weeks and be like, well, Venus is in retrograde, so my sex life is going to suck. You don't have to accept it. You can just consciously shift it. Okay. Take stock of your relationships. Where are you happy? Where are you not happy? What relationships are balanced? Where you're putting in just as much as the other person and you're getting out just as much as the other person. Okay. And by all means, the entire time Venus is in retrograde, practice extreme self-love, self-care, compassion, and pamper yourself. Honestly, okay? Rest a little bit more. When shit pops up, breathe through it, and deal with it later if you can. And by all means, if social media stresses you out, put your fucking phone down. Lose it. Put it in another room. Go lay in bed and watch your favorite comfort show. Okay, you have that choice, and that is self-care. Okay. All right. That's what I have for you all today. I love talking about retrogrades. I'm not an astrologer, but the more that I dive into astrology, or at least, astrological placements or events that are happening, I see how much they really do affect you. And I would have never thought to do an episode on Venus retrograde because it started on March 1st until shit started popping up, and then I was like, oh, well, this is actually could be because of Venus retrograde. And then something else would pop up over here. And I'm like, well, that could have actually been Venus retrograde as well. And so I found myself talking about it so much around me and on social media that I was like, fuck it, it's time to do a podcast episode. So hopefully you have found this episode helpful. Let me know, on social media. I hang out on Instagram mostly, or if you're watching this on YouTube, down in the comments, what resonated with you the most. For the bonus Patreon this week, I have some journal prompts and more ways to work with Venus retrograde energy, including some magical ways. So that's what the bonus content is over on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/inkedgoddesscreations. And this is for the paid Patreon members. But even the bottom tier, the $5 tier, gets you the bonus content. It also gets you a shout out. So I want to say thank you to Denise, who is a new paid Patreon member this week. Thank you so much. So yeah, that's what I have for you all today. Let me know in the comments or on social media, what resonated with you the most. And I hope you found this super helpful. I want to thank you all for listening, for being here, giving me a platform to teach, share my journey, share my experiences, all that fun stuff. Be sure to like, subscribe, and pass the podcast on to other witches who you think would love it. And yeah, I will see you all next week. Bye. If you're looking for a magical community where you can just be yourself, check out my Ink Spirit Coven. The Coven is an online learning circle for eclectic witches who want to learn new witchcraft practices and how to easily incorporate magic into their daily lives, all while being supported on their personal spiritual journey. And you'll have me as your magical mentor, sharing my knowledge, answering questions, and facilitating the online community. Head to inkspirit.com to learn more and join. And if unique witchcraft supplies made by witches for witches is just what you need, head to my store, inkgoddesscreations.com, to see what we have to enhance your magical practice. We also have the Ink Goddess Creations box, a monthly subscription of magic mail filled with exclusive items that fit a magical theme. Head to the site to see this month's theme and sneak peeks.